Hello, YouTubers, Facebookers, and all those lovely, lovely people who have subscribed to my YouTube tube channel. Yeah, nice to see you again, Jimmy Brown here. So I've been reading, skimming through a lot of these emails. They're pretty funny. First off, I do want to say I'm excited. Just got a cool email from Jeremy over at Sinister, and because I haven't had a Sinister pick. They sent me two, and my brother took them. So, because I told him I had some others on order. So, either way, I've been not playing my Sinister, so I'm waiting for that order. We'll see when they come in. But there are some comical things. Now, first of all, I've got to tell you, I'm shocked, flabbergasted, and completely and utterly amazed that so many people watched that 40-minute history on D. Very, very cool. It's awesome that people are still interested after all these years. So I thought that was really, really cool. So thank you for watching. Thank you for even caring. It's very cool. Anyways, but some of these emails, boy, I gotta tell you, they're kind of funny, and I just thought I'd just share some of them, or rather, I'll answer them. I'm not gonna read who wrote these to me. Now, if I know you personally, I'll shoot you a quick message or a quick email back. But if we don't really know each other personally, sometimes it depends on the email, but I'll respond. Otherwise, I'm trying to do all the responses through this, through the blogs. But I promise this isn't going to be 40 minutes like yesterday's installment. Anyways. So let me answer some of the questions. I'm going to pull up here, and I'll answer this one. This one is okay. And there was actually two. I tried grouping them all together so that way I can see. But do you shoot these all in one segment because you seem to be wearing the same shirt in all of them? I guess thanks for noticing. I really don't know what to say. I guess I'll just say this. No, I don't shoot all these segments in one day. I just have a plethora of black t-shirts. Sometimes they're short sleeve, sometimes they're long sleeve. I have plenty of other types of shirts that I wear. I just have a preference for black. Just always have. So, again, appreciate you noticing, but no, I don't just own one black t-shirt and wear it every single day. So yeah. That's real email, by the way. Second one that I got, this was only one, but I found it so humorous I just had to address it. Humorous, invasive, and at the same token, I know it wasn't meant in harm. It was just a question. But the email says, I was just wondering if you have hair plugs, because your hair always looks the same, and I didn't know if they were plugs or a toupee. Well, no, I'm pulling there. This is definitely not a toupee. If you did, you wouldn't see so much scalp. Number two, they're not hair plugs. Honestly, after knowing so many people who've done them, they're quite pricey. And the reason it's Hair Club for Men is because it's a club. You join a club, and it's not just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. So it's something you commit to. It's something that you're a part of. And, my hair's been thinning for years. I've always had kind of thin hair anyway, but it's thinning, and, of course, I've had my own personal struggle with, the yarmulke bald spot in the back, and trying to figure out ways to hide it and cover it, and I don't want to do the total Trump comb over. But it just depends how far my vanity will allow me to go. I tried shaving my head about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Just shaved it. I didn't bick it, but I went as far down as you can with a razor, and I just wanted to see what I'd look like, because I've kind of a funny shaped head. I have an egg shaped head. So I just wanted to see what it would look like when it would finally completely go. Because, I mean, once the bald spot gets to about this big, I mean, there's no point anymore, because like I said, you're either doing the Trump comb over to try to hide it, or you just shave it. And that's probably what I'll do. It's not there yet. I still got, even on the most thinnest part, there's still some, Homer Simpson sprouts coming through. So, it's enough to be able to justify leaving it. So, again, incredibly odd email. Why someone would ask. I don't know if they were saying, well, your hair looks cool, and that's why we think it looks like a wig, or implants, or plugs, or whatever, or man, your hair looks terrible. You should invest in a new rug. I really didn't know how to take it, but to you, you know who you are that wrote that. There's your answer. So, because I really didn't know how to do that, answer that, but I think I gave a nice detailed answer. Let's see here. Thank you so much for sharing all the information and details on Deliverance's history. That is so cool. Anything else we should know? I mean, unless you want nitty gritty, and in that case, I mean, YouTube's going to have to, blockade, 20 hours just for me. So, anything else we should know? I don't know. I'll think about it. And we'll go from there. I grouped these. This was a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12. Oh, I'm sorry. 6, 8, 17. Okay, so I mean, it's over 20 emails, all with the same generalized question. Just a brief summarization on each of my records. Where I was at, what was going on with me when I recorded them. That could be a loaded question. Better that this was filled with something else other than water, if you want that kind of a response. But well, without taking too much time today, because I did want to relatively keep this short, so sure, I'll be glad to go ahead and answer that as briefly as possible. Greetings of Death demo. It was just the band wanting to record a demo. It was cool and it was fun. It was at a little weird studio out in the middle of Pomona. Looked like they used to record country albums there. I don't even know who found it, but it was fun. We set up, we played, did some overdubs, and left. The one thing I like about it is it just sounds real, but those were just, there was really nothing into it, as far as recording that album or that demo. Other than Speckled Bird, we kind of just did that as a joke. But it was a song we were playing live, and we just loved it, because I heard some old man with a fiddle play it at a church that I used to go to, and I thought the song was cool. And plus, it's an old Roy Acuff song, and I love Roy Acuff, and I like old country. I don't really care for new country. Some of the chicken picking stuff's pretty cool. Brad Paisley and Vince Gill's a hell of a guitar player. But I really like old country, and it's just cool. It's got a cool vibe. That's why we did Speckled Bird. But onto the first album, or Camelot. The Camelot experience, very strange. It was cool because I'm working with an icon, John Elefante, who totally hated me, and then Dino, his brother, who me and Dino hit it off. Dino is amazing. But yeah, these guys run a cookie cutter company, and they, assembly line, and everybody, especially for that record, because they just wanted to get everybody in and out as quick as possible. I don't know if it's just that the label Regency Records wasn't paying them enough or whatever it was, but they definitely had a process they followed. Everybody used the same set, and John and Dino were fond of this stupid little thing called the Rock Man, and they just loved the way it sounded, by itself through an amp, whatever. And I remember fighting with them about that thing, that I don't want to use that. I don't want to use the Rock Man. I want to use mine, and they had it all dummied. I had a full stack boogie, and it's there, it's set up, and they have mics on it, and the lights are on, and everything else. So they think, I'm listening to it, but I'm actually playing through the Rock Man, and I can hear it. I'm not stupid. I know the tone, and they're saying, no, that's your amp mic'd, and yeah. Anyways, it was a weird experience, but the guys are awesome. Like I said, John's an icon, singer of Kansas, and one of the best singers on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, um, and songwriter. And Dino, great guitar player, and more than anything, just masters of the mixing console and production. Excellent production team, the two brothers, the Elefante brothers. But it was an okay experience. It was fun. I liked when they heard the song Attack. The first thing Dino said is, this is people. This is song people murder by. So if a serial killer's out, he's pumping himself up by listening to the kind of music we play. So I thought that was kind of funny. But that was it with that. First album, working with Bill Metoyer. I had such a bad experience with the Elefantes in the sense that I didn't want anything cookie cutter, that I was just so, I don't know, I was kind of traumatized by working with them, and I just wanted to make sure that my tone wasn't touched and wanted a little more control over things. But nonetheless, Bill granted a lot of grace, but also brought a lot of his own talent and treasure into it, and he did a great job. But the first album was basically taking all the songs we'd been playing for 4 years and finally recording them. And that's really what it was. It wasn't artistry in the sense of, we're going to go in there to create some magic. We just went in and did what we did and left. Weapons, different record. George and I worked real hard on the writing scheme with one another. Did a lot of pre-production work, where we were recording the songs using a 4-track and working out production ideas. George was kind enough to place me and put me as a co-producer on that album. I didn't really have anything to do with it. I spoke my mind, but it was George's production. But there's things about the album I really like. There's things about the album I really don't like, and but I think that goes with anything. At that point, I started trying to get more into the recording process, and even still, I was even already hearing where I was wanting to go with, like, State of Execution, Learn, River, Disturbance. I was already hearing it all in my head, and part of why I went, and well, we'll get to that. So that was Weapons. Overall, a solid record, good record. As far as its popularity, I do think it's a good record. I don't think it's a super strong record like everybody, or like it's been touted. And the only reason I say that is because I think it was just a right place at the right time record. Spiritual Warfare was a huge hot button at that time. And, with the release of the Peretti books, This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness, and it seemed like, every church you went to, they were doing, seminars and or not book series, but seminars and series on spiritual warfare. So it was like I said, right place, right time. It was just a good hot button issue, and it worked. And it wasn't planned like that. It just happened. Um, but good album nonetheless. What a joke. Um, yeah, that was too weird of a record. Only because a lot of the infighting started with me and George. He had one vision, I had another. Um, and like I said, at this point, I didn't want. I was. It wasn't that I was tired of thrash. It's just we'd been doing it for so long. George came into the band late '89 and did the Victory tour with us. Recorded Weapons, but I mean, George was in the band a couple of years, and prior to that, he wasn't in any thrash bands or anything like that. So George was. I don't want to call him. I don't want to say he's a Johnny Come Lately, but because he'd been listening to thrash music and stuff, regardless of the fact that he was in Recon and other types of metal bands. But he was just really really into it, and especially as a producer, he was really really starting to get real heavily into the whole scene. Where I was ready to move forward. To me, it's like we did this, and now I'm ready to move forward as an artist. Um, so there was a lot of clashing. Um, I can't sing thrash style, or that those guttural vocals and I can't do it. And I've tried, and the aggressive Tom Araya style singing like from Slayer. I've tried it. I just can't do it, and not to a point where I actually like the way I sound. So what a joke is what it is. I think there's a good couple of songs on there, but I'm always sad that it turned into what it turned into. All the food songs and everything else. And by the way, I read an email. Some guy said teach him or do a video how to cook chipped beef. Thought that was funny, but no. Anyways, so that was what a joke. Then we moved into the Stay of Execution era. I like to call this the Trinity, because it was the Terry Taylor Trinity. It was getting to work with Terry Taylor and Gene Eugene, this just unbelievable production and engineer team that, in my opinion, took us to another level. Took me to another level. Um, a lot of people don't realize and don't know that I started courting Terry back in '91 to do a solo project. And really, it all came down to this: is Terry just said, "Why don't you take what you're doing with your solo stuff, combine it with what you're doing with your current band, and just combine them and make it happen?" And I didn't think it would work, and he challenged me to make it work. Um, so Stay of Execution was kind of this in between record. It was a segue into the next progression of where Deliverance was going and where I was going writing wise. And I loved being challenged to not be so cheap and simple with my delivery and lyrics. Instead of saying, as a typical gospel song would say, give me the heart of Jesus who loves everyone. Terry said, say it a different way. To be able to say, give me the heart of the nail-torn lover. I loved being challenged to be more poetic in my delivery. And it was really, really cool. It was a good time, great time. It took me where I'd always wanted to go. Anybody who knows me knows that it's absolutely true that while everybody else was listening to Sabbath and Maiden and all this other stuff, I was walking around with my Walkman very quietly listening to Depeche Mode and Bowie and Flock of Seagulls and Gary Newman. Um, I was really really into Kraftwerk and Neu, and I liked other types of music. Metal was just my chosen release of aggression. It called to me. Um, but and I could write it well, but and I loved performing it. But as far as like creativity, I felt very limited. working in the metal realm. That's why I wanted to do something different. And Stay was the beginning of that. Learn, we wanted to keep very straightforward, make it almost sound like a band because we went a little overboard. Or I had went overboard on Stay of Execution with just the humongous vocals and 30 channels of vocals and these huge backups and all this other stuff, and massive multi-layering of guitars and different things. So Terry was like, why don't we kind of keep this a straightforward presentation and try to do. They let me have my string quartet for the opening track time, but Terry really wanted it to sound like the band as we do live, and it worked. And actually, Learn was a very somber record. CCM magazine did. We were on the cover. It was in fact our only time being on the cover of the magazine, and it said it was called "The Dark Side of Deliverance" was the article, and that was a really cool thing because it was a very melancholy, very brooding record, musically and lyrically. It was very brooding, very repenting, very lost, and a lot of questioning. And it was a great record, though. I enjoyed it a lot. So Learn will always have a favorite spot in my heart. And then the pinnacle for me for the Deliverance records was the River Disturbance album. And former band members and current band members, whatever, people, you talk to Manny, you talk to Jeff Mason, and they will say, River is beyond brilliant. It's a very special record. Then you talk to former members, with the exception of Brian Carilla. See, Brian Carilla got River. He understood it, and he appreciated it, and he loved it. Other people are just like, oh, it's not heavy. I hate hearing that. It's a good record. And when I first read what Scott Waters from Ultimatum had to say about it, he said this is the most underrated record Deliverance has ever done. And dude, that made me so. I actually wept when I read that because you have no idea the amount of criticism that we received for that album. Terrible letters being sent, because this is pre-email days. And, I just received so much hate mail about it. And it was terrible. I didn't like that feeling. But especially something that you spent almost 8 months of your life creating from nothing to that. And, Mike Phillips describes that feeling perfectly. It's like you just spending hours and hours and hours and hours just, painting this picture and then you bring it out for display and then somebody just comes and takes a whiz on it. And it's the truth, and it really sucks when you're criticized for something like that because there's some very special moments on there. And, but that was probably my favorite time. Camelot, I have a hard time with that record. I still love it. I still love it a lot. I think there's a lot of cool moments. But what a lot of people don't know, and I've said it in interviews and stuff, I worked so hard on that album. I put in a mega amount of hours compiling movie clips, the audio from, I literally almost 100 different movies. And I took all these audio clips and pieced them all together to make conversations because it was a conceptual record. And I made a full storyline to go in between each song and actually even wrote a book to accompany, to come in a small little paper form and to come in the back of the CD, so it'll be saran wrapped or shrink wrapped and have the book there. And then the label just came in and quashed it. We're going to get sued because, you have all these stars on there. There's samples from, Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer and Julia Roberts and, they're just on and on and on, Laurence Olivier and And they were right. Yeah, of course there were. Like I said, I thought it was ingenious. I thought it was cool. But, at that time it was the whole, Under Pressure, uh, with Queen Bowie and Vanilla Ice, and everybody was getting sued for sampling, and they just basically didn't want to. And I understood it in concept, but they should have. They knew what I was doing from the beginning, and they should have stopped me rather than me putting all these hours into it. So the record came out sounding incomplete and kind of stupid in a lot of spots because, at the end sections of certain songs, there's all these noises and sound effects, and you just hear all these weird synth sounds. Well, there was supposed to be dialogue over all that. And, it was all removed. So, so it just sounds like a bunch of noise, and, it sounds dumb. And so I think Camelot got ruined that way. But I actually like the record. I think there's extremely very introspective songs on that record. If you listen to the bookends, that's exactly the way I was feeling at that time. I was feeling like, now I stare at the readings of my life, page after page. They don't paint a pretty picture of me. Eyes wide as I pull another book from the shelf. When will this heartache end of a life torn between these two bookends? A lot of it was almost coming into what I was getting ready to go through into my life, almost prophetic for me. The songs "Make My Bed in Hell," the same kind of thing. There's one line on there I heard the other day that I hadn't listened to that album in years, and it said, if I make my bed in hell, I know you're with me. If I dwell the depths of the sea, I know you're there. If I chose the darkest corridor of time, it's only because I was blind. But I feel the depth of your mercy shores, and I know you're there. And there was some real heavy-duty things going on with me at that time. And I have no problem sharing because I'm an open book. And, I was dealing personally um, with being told by a new management team that I was and I've always been a big guy, always been a hefty dude, but at that point I'd gotten pretty heavy, and I was told we were getting ready to go to Europe, start going to Europe, and I was told the European audiences aren't going to take to you, you're a fairly good looking guy, and but it's being hidden by all this blubber, if you lost some weight, whatever. And I became a druggie. I started doing lots and lots of cocaine, and it started from a small amount. And anybody that knows me, I'm an addictive personality. I love Code Red, Mountain Dew, and all of a sudden it goes from buying one a day to buying 4 cases of it to go through in a week. I'm just that kind of guy. I discovered espresso. All of a sudden, one cup of espresso wasn't enough. I had to have 15 in it, in a 2-hour setting, just one of those kind of guys, I'm freely to admit that about myself, that I just have one of those addictive personalities. And it was just a bad time in my life. And I knew Deliverance couldn't go on, not with me in that state. And in fact, there's a song, the song Anymore, on Camelot, where I say, and I know the state I'm in can't last, but the closet's bursting with force of rage from the demons in my past. And it was really where I was at. It was, like I said, bad time, but thankfully I woke up, stopped. Painful, hard, horrifying process to get through. Very painful, very hard. A lot of hardships followed for me for years, and mentally, I was definitely messed up. Um, Lived with anxiety attacks, and yeah, it was just a bad time. It was a bad time, and but thankfully, you know, through the grace of God and people, good people that cared about me, and my wife Helen, I attribute so much to that lady. Known Helen since I was 12, 13 years old, and even then she was a bedrock to me. She's always been there through thick and thin, through everything, and I cannot believe she stuck through me with most of that crap. And you know, she knows how much I love her and I appreciate her. And but she helped me through all that, and we have just lived a normal life since. So Camelot just marked the end of an era. It was done. So it took me a while, it took me many years before I can listen to that record again. And but now that I hear it, it's like, wow, there's so many poignant points to the record. And so if people can just get off their speed metal, thrash metal, has to be 100 miles an hour, high horses, and really listen to some music that touches the soul. It's funny. I jam with Jeff Seba, and Jeff Seba from Jupiter 6, he says, he told me flat out, I'm not a lyrics guy. I'm not a vocalist type of guy. I write music, I do this and everything, but I pay attention to the guitars. I'm a guitar player. And he goes, but working with you is the first time I started paying attention to lyrics and vocals, and how the passion of the vocals carry you into another world, and lyrics, and but it's like he said, he had to crawl off that thing that told him I'm just a guitar player and I listen to guitar. I just wish people would do that, because there are some moments that are really important on some of those records, and River and Camelot especially are the ones I'm most proud of in that sense. Next one, Assimilation. Cool record, cool idea. I was talked into doing it. Wasn't really like my heart to do it, and I really wanted it to sound more mechanical and more Rammsteinish. Didn't happen. And part of it is I don't have that kind of voice that can just talk. That part of what makes Till from Rammstein so cool is that he sounds like a monster. And, I don't, and I don't want to. I'm sure I could sound like one, but, I didn't, that wasn't my goal. So, so that kind of left that with hard to do, as far as, making it sound the way I wanted to. But some pretty songs are on there. In fact, if you listen to it, "Sell Your Soul" is one of my favorites. It's a great one, and the last song, "Save Me From," that's a cool song. So, "As Above, So Below." I don't know much about this record in the sense that I haven't really listened to it in a long time. I just remember Mike's solo playing just being ridiculous on it. It's like some of his all-time best work. And Mike Phillips has never gotten the accolades that I believe he truly deserves, because he really is one of the absolute best. And when I see these Christian guitar heroes, and he's not mentioned, I mean, not even on the list, and all these other terrible garbage players are on there, and I don't mean to say that to sound rude, but I mean, there's some players that just don't deserve to even hold a guitar. And they're listed on there, and then you got this guy who's just a ridiculous shredding monster, and he never even gets mentioned. Kind of a bummer. People should listen to "As Above, So Below" just to hear the master for work, because he did masterful jobs on that album. Just my opinion. Cool lyrics, cool vibe. There's a lot of that record I don't care for, but it's an okay record. There's some cool moments on there. "Enlighten's" probably my favorite song on there. That and the title track, "As Above, So Below." And I think that was it for Deliverance. Well, no. Then there's "Hear What I Say." Initially, it was supposed to be the last Deliverance record, and I even did the liner notes to say goodbye. Um, hmm. And who knows? I mean, like I said, at this point right now, it's I know we'd like to say that the term God willing, but it really is us. It's really, that's almost pushing the blame off on God if it doesn't happen. Oh, well, it was God's will. He didn't want it to happen. If we want to do it, we're going to make it happen. And, my mind, my heart is when I write right now, I don't write in that format. I don't write in the thinking of I don't write that way right now. I write in a completely different form. Um, Now there's some moments that I get that way, and then that gets tucked away into what I call the D file. And should we ever do another Deliverance record, that's what it's going to go to. Um, but I love and have so much fun doing my Jupiter 6 stuff, which I wish people would give a chance because there's some really good stuff. Again, crawl off the metal high horse that expects everything to be chunky, heavy, thrashy. And if that's your shtick, cool, stick with it. I like to try to keep my mind broad and open. Um, Anyways, so hear what I say. A lot of fun. It was cool to work with. Um, I think in a lot of ways I was just mad at Phillips working with Mike for As Above as well as Hear What I Say. Man, I'm going to tell you something about Mike. Me and that dude get together and all we do is laugh. I mean, laugh, laugh, laugh. We have so much fun. He laughs so much his gut hurts. I laugh so much I'm crying and losing my voice. We just have so much fun with each other. But man, when it comes to working with one another in music, oh, it's a nightmare. And part of it is because he's just so picky. I'll work 12, 14, 16 hours on a mix. And then he's on top of that, he's a passive aggressive. He'll call you after he listens to the mix and goes, "Man, dude, that was so good. That was really incredible, man. I got to just tell you, it was really good. But if it was me, I would have tried this, 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 and then what it really turns into is he doesn't like the mix. He wants it to be this way, and that kind of stuff just aggravates me and drives me nuts. And it's hard for me to deal with. Not that I think my mixes are perfect and that nothing can be touched, but what it is when you have a vision in your head of what something's supposed to sound like, um, you want to stick with it. And it's hard working with several people that all kind of hear this. You got to have the one guy that you trust is going to bring it all together. And that's what I try to do. Not that I won't listen to any other people's suggestions. Of course I do. I appreciate it. Because, like I said, their suggestions could be better than mine and what I'm hearing in my head. So, nonetheless, there's a lot about Hear What I Say that I really dig. I wish I can go back and remix it, and maybe one day I will, because there are some things about it that you can tell I just didn't care anymore. I ran out of time of trying to mix live drums versus, the superior drummer drums, and ended up not using two of Jason's tracks in favor of using the pre-programmed drum trigger sounds that I'd already programmed. And what it was is just like I said, at that point I was working so much. I was working 18, 20 hour, or no, 16 to 18 hour days, and trying to mix in between all that. Yeah, it just wasn't going to happen. So, overall, it was a cool experience, I guess. Really neat to be working with Manny again and hear his bass playing on the tunes, and work with Jason. I mean, that alone, I really wish I could have worked with him in person. That would have been really cool. But just to have his talents lent to the project was amazing. Wow, 40 minutes again. Dear God, I do ramble on, guys. I'm so sorry. Um, Maybe I won't post this. I don't know. Well, that was it. I saw there was mostly the bulk of the emails that I was going through. I'm still going. I've got. Let me look here. I've got quite a few that still aren't being read. And I got to just go through them. Um, but I thought those were some of the funnier things. And I know we touched on some pretty serious things today with what each record meant to me. And this one email just popped in. Uh, I'll answer this. If you're doing a new record, what's it going to sound like? Couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Um, George has sent me some ideas. I've sent the guys an idea or two. Um, but it's a guessing game. If you're looking for Weapons Part 2, it's not going to happen. Um, Mostly because, you know, I just don't believe, and you know, I couldn't, inside of me, if I had access to write Roger Waters and David Gilmour and call them, you guys really do need to do The Wall Part 2, or Wish You Were Here Part 2, or why didn't you guys do Animals Part 2? You know, uh, it's just weird to me, you know. Um, I couldn't see telling Slayer, you guys got to do Rain and Blood Part 2, or Metallica, Puppets Part 2, you know, the Master of Puppets. I mean, it's just, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, we're going to give you Weapons Part 2. It's not going to happen. Just won't. I mean, that was a moment. It was a moment caught in time. And the beauty of that time is that you'll never have it again. And it was caught on tape. And that's the way we can relive that time, is listening to that tape. But to go back and try to recreate in that same mode can't happen. It just doesn't work that way. So if that's what people want, it's probably not what's going to happen. So I'm just being very honest with you. George is in a different place musically. I mean, even though he's still pretty dogmatic Joe Metal, he's definitely not where he was when we wrote Weapons, where he's all into Testament and Sepultura constantly. Jim has been doing all sorts of different types of music. Victor is just out there. You think of the most obscure thing. Go to a record store and find the most horribly obscure. No one's ever heard of this crap. I don't care, and I'm getting it for 40 cents out of the bin. In fact, they're giving me 40 cents to take it because it's so horrible and no one's ever heard of it. There's a humongous chance Victor's heard of it and probably owns it. Victor has some of the most obscure tastes in music, and that's what makes Victor Victor, and it's awesome. And that's why he and I get along so well, because there's a lot of crap I listen to that no one's ever heard of, and they ask me, why in God's green earth do you listen to this garbage? And to me, it's not garbage. I love it. So, well, anyways, so wow, I think I outdid myself on this one. The last one was 41 minutes. This is 43. So 43, 49, 43:50. I think we're going to just leave it at 44. Until the next time, guys, thank you so much. Jimmy Brown coming at you from Brundage, Alabama at the Three Frogs Studios, and we'll see you soon.